The dust swirled around Priscilla Porter's ankles as she stepped down from the stagecoach, her travel-worn dress clinging to her slender frame. Whispers followed her like shadows as she made her way down the main street of Copper Creek. This remote frontier town in the Arizona Territory wasn't ready for a woman like her, educated, independent, and carrying secrets that would make even the hardiest of frontiersmen pale. It was 1876, and the promise of a teaching position had brought Priscilla from Boston to this sun-baked settlement. Her uncle's letter had assured her she was needed here, that the children deserved education regardless of their humble beginnings. What he'd failed to mention was the reception she would receive. "Another fancy Eastern lady," someone muttered as she passed. "Won't last a week in these parts." Priscilla tightened her grip on her worn leather satchel, refusing to acknowledge the sting of their words. She'd endured worse in Boston after the scandal, that terrible, life-altering scandal that had sent her fleeing westward. The schoolhouse stood at the far end of town, a modest wooden structure with a small bell tower. Adjacent to it was a tiny cabin that would serve as her quarters. As she approached, Priscilla noticed a man hammering at the roof of the cabin, his broad shoulders flexing with each strike. His Stetson hat shielded his face from the relentless sun. "Excuse me," she called, setting down her bag. "I'm looking for Sheriff Porter. I'm his niece, Priscilla." The man paused, turning to look down at her. For a moment he seemed frozen in place, hammer suspended mid-swing. Then he tucked the tool into his belt and climbed down the ladder with a practiced ease that spoke of a lifetime spent in physical labor. "Sheriff Porter's your uncle?" he asked, removing his hat and revealing striking blue eyes set in a sun-weathered face. "He didn't mention his niece was coming to stay." "He didn't?" Priscilla felt a flutter of unease. "He wrote to me about the teaching position, said the town needed a schoolteacher." The man studied her for a long moment. "Name's Samuel Eastwood, town marshal." "And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Miss Porter, but your uncle passed 3 weeks ago. Pneumonia took him quick." The ground seemed to shift beneath Priscilla's feet. Uncle Thomas dead, her last living relative, her safety net in this wild territory gone. She reached out blindly for support, finding only the rough wooden post of the cabin's porch. "Miss Porter, you all right?" Samuel's voice sounded distant, though he stood right beside her. I don't understand. Who's the sheriff now?" "That would be me, acting until the county sends a replacement." He gestured toward the cabin. This was meant to be fixed up for whoever took the position permanently. Priscilla straightened her spine, willing strength into her trembling limbs. "And the teaching position, is that still available?" Samuel's expression softened slightly. "Town still needs a teacher. Children have been running wild since old Mrs. Winters retired last spring." He hesitated. "But it's a hard life out here for a woman alone, especially one used to Eastern comforts." "I'm tougher than I appear, Mr. Eastwood." Priscilla lifted her chin. "And I have nowhere else to go." Something in her tone must have conveyed the desperation she was trying so hard to conceal, because Samuel nodded slowly. "Cabin needs work, but it'll keep the rain off your head. School term's set to start in 2 weeks. "Thank you." Priscilla picked up her bag, eager to retreat to privacy before her composure cracked entirely. "One more thing," Samuel called as she reached for the cabin door. "Folks around here are suspicious of outsiders. Don't take it personal if they're not welcoming right away." If he only knew, Priscilla thought grimly, how accustomed she was to being unwelcomed. The cabin was sparse but clean, a single room with a small iron stove, a narrow bed, a washstand, and a wooden table with 2 chairs. Dust motes danced in the late afternoon sunlight streaming through the solitary window. Priscilla sank onto the bed, finally allowing the tears to fall. Uncle Thomas had been her last hope, the only family member who hadn't turned his back on her after the scandal in Boston. The whispers, the accusations, the shame she'd fled 300 miles to escape it all, only to find herself truly alone in a strange, hostile land. A knock at the door startled her. Hastily wiping her tears, Priscilla composed herself before opening it. Samuel Eastwood stood there, hat in hand, alongside an older woman with kind eyes and a basket covered with a checkered cloth. "This is Mrs. Abigail Thompson," Samuel introduced. "Runs the general store with her husband. She's brought some supplies to help you get settled." "Just the basics, dear," Mrs. Thompson said, stepping forward with a warm smile that reached her eyes. "Some bread, preserves, coffee, and such. Can't have you going hungry your first night in Copper Creek." "That's very kind," Priscilla said, genuinely touched by the unexpected gesture. "It's what neighbors do," Mrs. Thompson replied. She glanced around the cabin. "This place needs a woman's touch, that's certain. Come by the store tomorrow and we'll see about getting you properly set up." After they left, Priscilla unpacked her meager belongings, placing her books, her most treasured possessions, carefully on the small shelf above the bed. As night fell, she sat by the window, watching the town settle into darkness. Lanterns glowed in distant windows, and occasional bursts of laughter drifted from the saloon down the street. In Boston, she'd been a pariah. Here, she was a stranger. Perhaps, Priscilla thought as she prepared for bed, that was improvement enough for now. The next morning brought a brutal reminder of the frontier's harshness. Priscilla woke to find a crude message scrawled on her door. "No fancy women wanted. Ignore it," Samuel advised when she showed him. He was back at work on her roof, his expression grim as he examined the vandalism. "Some folks are just set in their ways." "This isn't about me being from the East, is it?" Priscilla asked. "This is about me being an unmarried woman living alone." Samuel's silence was confirmation enough. "I'll be fine," she insisted. "I've weathered worse." His blue eyes studied her with unsettling intensity. "Have you now? What exactly brings a well-spoken woman like yourself to a place like Copper Creek, Miss Porter?" "The opportunity to teach," she replied, the practiced lie rolling easily from her tongue. "Just that." His skepticism was evident. "Is that not enough?" Samuel's mouth quirked into something almost resembling a smile. "Suppose it is. School needs examining before term starts. Want to see it?" The schoolhouse was larger than Priscilla had expected, a single room with rows of bench desks, a teacher's desk on a small platform, and a pot-bellied stove in the corner. A chalkboard covered most of one wall, and shelves of books lined another. "More books than I expected," she commented, running her fingers over the spines. "Your uncle's doing," Samuel explained. "He believed in education. Not everyone in town agreed with spending money on books when the children could be working, but Thomas was persuasive." Priscilla felt a fresh wave of grief for the uncle she'd barely known. "How many students can I expect?" 28 at last count. Ages 5 to 16. Some only come when their families don't need them in the fields or mines. The challenge was daunting, but Priscilla felt a spark of purpose ignite within her. This, at least, was something she could do, something that might, in time, earn her a place in this community. The next 2 weeks passed in a flurry of preparation. Priscilla cleaned the schoolhouse from top to bottom, organized books and supplies, and prepared lessons. Samuel continued repairs on her cabin, often working well into the evening. Their interactions were brief but increasingly comfortable, and Priscilla found herself looking forward to his daily visits. On the Sunday before school was to begin, Priscilla attended church service, hoping to meet some of her future students and their parents. She wore her best dress, a modest blue cotton that had seen better days but still maintained an air of propriety. The small church was packed, and all conversation ceased when she entered. Dozens of curious eyes followed her progress to an empty pew near the back. The sermon that day, delivered by a stern-faced preacher named Reverend Williams, seemed pointedly focused on the dangers of worldly influence and the corruption of youth. More than once, Priscilla felt his gaze linger accusingly on her. After the service, few approached her. Those who did were mostly mothers with young children, cautiously introducing themselves and their little ones. One woman, however, made a more memorable impression. Miss Porter, a severe-looking woman with iron-gray hair, approached. "I am Mrs. Eleanor Caldwell, wife of the town council president. I feel it's my duty to inform you that while we appreciate your willingness to teach, there are certain standards we expect from those who shape young minds." "I assure you, Mrs. Caldwell, I take education very seriously," Priscilla replied politely. "It's not just education I'm concerned with, but moral character." Mrs. Caldwell's eyes narrowed. "We don't know anything about you or why you've come here alone without family or husband." In Boston, such circumstances might pass without comment, but here, "I believe Miss Porter's character is vouched for by her late uncle," Samuel's voice interrupted as he appeared beside Priscilla. "And as acting sheriff, I can attest she's shown nothing but dedication to preparing for the school term." Mrs. Caldwell's lips thinned to a disapproving line. "Sheriff Eastwood, I merely express the concerns of many in our community." A young, unmarried woman living alone, with no connections or recommendations beyond a relative, now deceased. "Surely you understand our caution." "What I understand," Samuel replied, his tone deceptively mild, "is that this town's children haven't had proper schooling in months and Miss Porter is qualified and willing to teach them. That seems more important than gossip." Mrs. Caldwell drew herself up stiffly. "We shall see how the children progress under her tutelage." With that parting shot, she walked away. "Thank you," Priscilla murmured once the woman was out of earshot. Samuel shrugged. "Eleanor Caldwell thinks she runs this town because her husband sits on the council. Don't let her intimidate you." As they walked from the church, Priscilla noticed the stares and whispers following them. "Your defense of me will only fuel speculation," she observed. "Folks are going to talk regardless," he replied. "Might as well give them something worth talking about." The first day of school brought its own challenges. Some children arrived eager to learn, while others came clearly under protest from their parents. One boy, about 14, slouched at the back of the room with open defiance written across his features. "Your name?" Priscilla asked when she reached him during roll call. "Daniel Caldwell," he replied with a smirk that immediately identified him as Mrs. Caldwell's son. "My ma says you ain't fit to be teaching us." A hush fell over the classroom. "In this classroom, Daniel, we use proper grammar," Priscilla corrected calmly, "and we show respect to one another. That includes saying you aren't rather than you ain't and keeping unkind opinions to ourselves." Several children giggled, which only darkened Daniel's scowl. "Now," Priscilla continued, addressing the entire class, "I know I'm new to Copper Creek and you all have questions about me. That's natural. So today we'll start with introductions and what we hope to learn this term." By midday, Priscilla had begun to identify the dynamics of her classroom: the natural leaders, the shy ones, those who struggled with reading, and those who showed particular aptitude. Daniel Caldwell remained hostile, but she noticed him watching attentively during the mathematics lesson despite his affected boredom. After school, as she was tidying the classroom, Samuel appeared in the doorway. "Survived your first day, I see," he observed. "Barely," Priscilla admitted with a tired smile. "I'd forgotten how exhausting children can be. Any trouble, nothing I couldn't handle, though Mrs. Caldwell's son seems determined to make things difficult." Samuel leaned against the doorframe. "Daniel's not a bad kid at heart. His father's rarely home and his mother. Well, you've met her." "Why are you here, Mr. Eastwood?" Priscilla asked, suddenly aware that they were alone. "Thought you might like to join me for supper at the hotel dining room," he said. "Save you cooking after a long day." The invitation caught her off guard. "People will talk. Let them." He straightened, meeting her gaze directly. "Unless you'd rather not be seen with the town marshal." There was something challenging in his tone that stirred a response in Priscilla. Perhaps it was foolish, but after a day of proving herself to skeptical children and their parents, she wasn't inclined to back down from another challenge. "Very well," she agreed. "I'll just need to freshen up first." The hotel dining room was the closest thing Copper Creek had to a proper restaurant. When Priscilla entered with Samuel, conversations paused briefly before resuming with increased intensity. He guided her to a table by the window, far enough from others to afford some privacy. "You're making quite a stir," Samuel commented as they sat down. "I seem to have that effect wherever I go," Priscilla replied, attempting lightness but hearing the bitterness creep into her voice. Samuel studied her for a moment. "Something happened in Boston," he said. "It wasn't a question." Priscilla busied herself arranging her napkin. "We all have pasts, Mr. Eastwood." "Sam," he corrected. "And yes, we do, some more complicated than others." Their food arrived, simple fare of beef stew and fresh bread, temporarily halting the conversation. When the server departed, Sam leaned forward slightly. "Your uncle mentioned you once, in passing," he said. Said his niece was making waves in Boston society with her progressive ideas. Priscilla nearly choked on her stew. He knew about that. He seemed proud of it, whatever it was. She set down her spoon, considering how much to reveal. "I was engaged to be married," she began carefully, "to the son of a prominent family. Jonathan Blackwell was charming, handsome, and as I discovered too late, cruel." Sam remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "I was teaching at a girls' school while planning our wedding. Some of my students were factory girls, immigrants, and poor children who worked during the day and studied at night. I became involved in efforts to improve their working conditions." Jonathan disapproved. "When I refused to abandon my students, he ended our engagement in a rather public manner." "That hardly seems scandalous enough to drive you across the country," Sam observed. Priscilla smiled ruefully. "That was just the beginning. After our broken engagement, I became more vocal about the conditions in factories owned by Boston's elite families, including the Blackwells. I wrote articles for the newspaper under a pseudonym. When my identity was discovered, Jonathan claimed I had compromised my virtue with him prior to our engagement and then attempted to trap him in marriage." Sam's expression darkened, and people believed him. "His family owned half the banks in Boston. Mine was respectable but of modest means. Yes, they believed him." Priscilla lifted her chin. "The school dismissed me. My own family, except for Uncle Thomas, turned their backs. I had no choice but to leave, and you came here, where no one knew me, where I could start fresh." She looked around at the curious faces stealing glances their way. "Though it seems starting fresh isn't as simple as changing locations. People here are wary of change," Sam acknowledged, "but they respect those who prove themselves." "And how does one prove oneself in Copper Creek, Sam?" "By staying when things get difficult. By caring about this place and its people." His blue eyes held hers. "By being exactly who you are, Priscilla Porter, regardless of what they say." Something warm unfurled in Priscilla's chest, something dangerously like hope. The following weeks brought a gradual shift in the town's reception. As Priscilla's students began bringing home new knowledge and enthusiasm for learning, parents who had been skeptical became cautiously appreciative. Mrs. Thompson from the general store openly supported her, often sending treats for the schoolchildren or stopping by Priscilla's cabin with fresh baked goods, just because. Sam continued his visits as well, sometimes bringing books he thought might interest her or news from the wider territory. Their friendship grew, though Priscilla carefully maintained certain boundaries. Her reputation was fragile enough without adding rumors of impropriety with the town marshal. One evening in late October, Priscilla was grading papers by lamplight when an urgent knocking startled her. She opened her door to find Sam, his expression grave. "There's been an accident at the mine," he said without preamble. "Several men injured. Dr. Miller needs assistance." Priscilla grabbed her shawl. "Of course." The doctor's small office was overwhelmed with injured miners. Dr. Miller, an elderly man with steady hands despite his years, directed Priscilla to help clean wounds while he attended to the more serious cases. She worked through the night, moving from patient to patient, cleaning dirt and rock from lacerations, applying bandages, and offering what comfort she could. Some of the men were fathers of her students, others she recognized from town. None questioned her presence or assistance in their moment of need. Sam worked alongside her, his strength vital in moving injured men and his calm authority maintaining order among the anxious family members who gathered outside. Dawn was breaking when the last miner had been treated. Priscilla's dress was stained with blood and grime, her hair falling from its pins, her eyes burning with exhaustion. "You should rest," Sam told her, looking nearly as tired as she felt. "I'll walk you home." "What about you?" she asked as they stepped out into the crisp morning air. "I'll sleep when I can. Need to check on the families, make sure they have what they need." Impulsively, Priscilla touched his arm. "You're a good man, Samuel Eastwood." His hand covered hers briefly. Get some rest, Miss Porter. Your students need you. Later that day, despite her exhaustion, Priscilla returned to school. To her surprise, several of her students had brought food and small gifts for the families affected by the mine accident. Daniel Caldwell, whose father owned shares in the mine, approached her desk during the lunch break. "My mother says I should thank you," he said stiffly, "for helping at the doctor's office. My uncle was one of the men you helped." "I only did what anyone would do," Priscilla replied. Daniel shuffled his feet. "She also says maybe she misjudged you, a little." Coming from Alina Caldwell, that was practically a ringing endorsement. The mine accident marked a turning point. Priscilla found herself increasingly included in community activities, invited to church socials, welcomed at the general store with friendly greetings rather than suspicious glances, consulted by parents about their children's education. Sam, too, became a more constant presence in her life. He began escorting her to Sunday services, sharing meals with her at the hotel dining room, and bringing books for her classroom. Their conversations ranged from literature to politics to the everyday happenings of Copper Creek. Priscilla found herself looking forward to his visits, even as she reminded herself that getting too attached would be unwise. As Thanksgiving approached, Mrs. Thompson insisted that Priscilla join her family for the holiday feast. "You can't be alone on Thanksgiving, dear," she declared. "Samuel will be there too. He's had Thanksgiving with us since he came to town 3 years ago." The Thompson home was warm and inviting, filled with delicious aromas and cheerful conversation. Seated beside Sam at the laden table, surrounded by the Thompson family and several other guests, Priscilla felt a belonging she hadn't experienced in years. After dinner, while others chatted in the parlor, Sam invited her to step outside for a breath of air. The night was clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. "Happy?" he asked as they stood on the porch. "Yes," Priscilla admitted. "I didn't expect to find this community, acceptance." She glanced at him. "Friendship." Sam's expression was difficult to read in the darkness. "Is that what we have, Priscilla? Friendship?" Her heart quickened. "What else would you call it?" He moved closer. "I'm not sure there's a proper word for what I feel when I'm with you." Priscilla should have stepped back. Should have reminded him of her tarnished reputation, of the gossip that would erupt if they were seen like this. Instead, she remained still as he raised a hand to her face, his fingers gently brushing her cheek. "Sam," she whispered, a warning and a question all at once. "I know," he replied, understanding her unspoken concerns. "I know the risks, but I find myself thinking of you at the strangest moments, when I'm checking the streets at dawn, when I hear the school bell ring, when someone says something clever that I know would make you smile." Priscilla closed her eyes briefly. "I can't offer you an untarnished name. Your past made you who you are," Sam interrupted, "and who you are is exactly who I want to know better." The front door opened suddenly, spilling light and laughter onto the porch. They stepped apart as Mrs. Thompson appeared. "There you are, we're about to serve pie. Come in before you catch your death in this night air." The moment broken, they returned inside, but something had shifted between them, something Priscilla wasn't sure she was ready to acknowledge. Winter descended on Copper Creek with a vengeance. Heavy snow blanketed the town, making travel difficult and forcing the mine to reduce operations. School attendance became sporadic as families kept children home during the worst weather. One particularly bitter morning in December, only 7 students braved the snow to attend class. Priscilla had just begun the day's lessons when the door burst open, admitting a gust of frigid air and Sam, his coat covered in snow. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, his expression serious. "Need to speak with Miss Porter." Outside in the hallway, he explained the situation. "Got word from a ranch hand who made it to town. There's a family stranded at the Morgan place about 5 miles out. Their little girl's sick with fever, doctor. Miller's gone to another ranch where a man broke his leg, and I need to gather supplies and get out there." "What do you need from me?" Priscilla asked. "You have nursing experience after the mine accident. I could use your help with the child." Priscilla didn't hesitate. "Let me dismiss the children and gather some things." Within an hour, they were on horseback heading out of town. Sam had found Priscilla a sturdy mount and helped her bundle up against the cold. The journey was slow and treacherous, the horses struggling through snow drifts as the wind howled around them. Almost there, Sam called back to her after what seemed like hours. Through the swirling snow, Priscilla could just make out the shape of a small ranch house. Inside, they found a desperate situation. The Morgans, John, Mary, and their 3 children had been snowed in for days. Their youngest, 6-year-old Emma, lay burning with fever on a small bed, her breathing labored. "Pneumonia, I think," Mary Morgan said tearfully. "It came on so fast." Priscilla removed her outer garments and immediately went to work. She sent the other children to fetch snow, which she used to cool Emma's fever. Sam helped John Morgan strengthen the fire and prepare hot broth. Throughout the day and into the night, Priscilla stayed by Emma's side, spooning broth and medicine between the girl's cracked lips, bathing her forehead with cool cloths, monitoring her breathing. Sam remained close, bringing whatever Priscilla needed without being asked. As night deepened and the blizzard intensified, it became clear they wouldn't be returning to town. The Morgans insisted Sam and Priscilla take their bed while they stayed with their children in the main room. Alone in the small bedroom, Priscilla and Sam faced each other awkwardly. "I'll sleep on the floor," he offered. "Don't be ridiculous. It's freezing and you need proper rest. The bed is large enough for both of us." Priscilla's practical tone belied her racing heart. They lay side by side, a respectable space between them, both fully clothed except for their boots. Despite her exhaustion, Priscilla found sleep elusive, acutely aware of Sam's presence beside her. "You were remarkable today," he said softly in the darkness. "The way you knew exactly what to do for that child." "My mother was often ill when I was growing up," Priscilla explained. "I learned to care for her. Is she still living?" "No, she passed when I was 16. My father followed 3 years later." Sam was quiet for a moment. "My parents died in a cholera outbreak when I was 20. No siblings. Been on my own since then." Priscilla turned her head to look at his profile in the dimness. "Is that why you came west?" "Partly. Wanted to make my own way. Ended up as a deputy in Colorado first, then drifted here when I heard they needed law enforcement. And do you feel you belong here?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Sam shifted to face her. "I do now," he said simply. In the intimacy of darkness, with the storm howling outside and the rest of the world far away, Priscilla felt her carefully constructed barriers weakening. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Of what?" "Of believing I could have a place here, a home. Every time I've started to feel secure, something has happened to take it away." Sam's hand found hers beneath the blankets. "Not everything gets taken away, Priscilla." She fell asleep with his hand still holding hers, and for the first time in years her dreams were peaceful. By morning, Emma's fever had broken. The storm had passed as well, leaving a pristine white landscape and clear skies. After ensuring the Morgan family had sufficient supplies and that Emma was truly improving, Sam and Priscilla prepared to return to town. "We can't thank you enough," Mary Morgan said, embracing Priscilla. "You saved our little girl." "You're always welcome in our home," John added, shaking Sam's hand firmly. The ride back to Copper Creek was easier with the storm gone, though the deep snow still slowed their progress. They traveled in comfortable silence, each processing the events of the past 24 hours and what had shifted between them. As they crested the final hill overlooking the town, Sam reined his horse to a stop. Priscilla halted beside him, taking in the view of smoke rising from chimneys against the snow-covered backdrop. "Pretty, isn't it?" Sam said. "Yes," Priscilla agreed. "I never thought I'd find a place like this beautiful. When I first arrived, all I saw was dust and hardship. And now—" She smiled. "I see home." The word hung between them, full of meaning. Sam reached across the space separating their horses and took her gloved hand in his. "I meant what I said last night, Priscilla. Not everything gets taken away." Their return to town caused less stir than Priscilla had feared. The circumstances, a sick child in need of care during a blizzard, were deemed sufficiently urgent to justify their overnight absence together. Dr. Miller, upon hearing of Emma Morgan's condition, praised Priscilla's quick action and treatment. You've got a natural healing touch, he told her. If you ever tire of teaching, you'd make a fine nurse. Christmas approached, bringing with it a festive atmosphere despite the harsh weather. The schoolchildren prepared a holiday program, rehearsing songs and recitations to perform for their parents. Priscilla found herself swept up in the preparations, grateful for the busy days that left little time for dwelling on her complicated feelings for Sam. He remained a constant presence, though their interactions had taken on a new dimension since the night at the Morgan Ranch. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a sense of possibilities deferred but not denied. On the evening of the school Christmas program, the small church was packed with families. Children performed their pieces with varying degrees of success, drawing proud smiles from parents and indulgent laughter from the community. Even Daniel Caldwell participated, delivering a recitation of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" with surprising eloquence. After the program, as families mingled and enjoyed refreshments, Eleanor Caldwell approached Priscilla with an unexpected warmth. "Miss Porter, I wish to apologize for my initial judgment of you," she said, her usual stiffness somewhat softened. "You've proven yourself to be an asset to our community, both as a teacher and in your assistance during times of need. The children have flourished under your guidance." Priscilla was momentarily speechless. "Thank you, Mrs. Caldwell. That means a great deal coming from you." "I understand you spent Thanksgiving with the Thompsons," Eleanor continued. "My husband and I would be honored if you would join us for Christmas dinner. Marshall Eastwood will be there as well, of course." The invitation, coming from the woman who had been her most vocal critic, represented a final acceptance that Priscilla had scarcely dared to hope for. "I would be delighted," she replied sincerely. Later, as she walked home through the snow-covered streets with Sam at her side, Priscilla shared her amazement at Eleanor's change of heart. "People can surprise you," Sam observed. "Though I'm not surprised she finally recognized your worth. Anyone with eyes can see what you've brought to this town." They reached Priscilla's cabin, but instead of saying goodnight, Sam hesitated. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his coat pocket. "An early Christmas gift." He handed her a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Curious, Priscilla unwrapped it to reveal a leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with her initials. "Sam, it's beautiful," she breathed, running her fingers over the tooled leather. "Thought you might want to write down your own stories," he explained. "After hearing you tell stories to the children, well, you have a gift for words." The thoughtfulness of the gift touched her deeply. "Thank you, I'll treasure it." "There's something else," Sam said, his voice growing serious. "The county's appointed a permanent sheriff. He'll arrive after New Year's." Priscilla's heart sank. "You're leaving?" "That depends." He took a step closer. "I've been offered a position as town marshal in Silver Springs, about 30 miles south of here. Better pay, bigger town." "Oh," Priscilla tried to mask her disappointment. "That's a wonderful opportunity." "It would be," Sam agreed, "except for one thing." "What's that?" His blue eyes held her steadily. "You wouldn't be there." The world seemed to still around them, the cold winter night fading from Priscilla's awareness as Sam's words sank in. "I've been trying to find the right way to say this," he continued. "I'm not a man of fancy words. But I know what I feel, Priscilla. I love you, and I don't want to go anywhere you're not." Tears welled in Priscilla's eyes. "Sam, you don't understand what you're saying. My reputation, to hell with your reputation," he interrupted, his voice fierce. "I know who you are. I've seen your courage, your compassion, your strength. I've watched you win over this town despite their prejudices, and I've fallen in love with you more each day. People will talk," she whispered. "Let them talk, we know the truth." He took her hands in his. "I'm asking you to marry me, Priscilla Porter, to be my wife, whether we stay here or go to Silver Springs or find some other place entirely. I just want to be where you are." Priscilla closed her eyes, overwhelmed by emotions she'd kept tightly controlled for so long. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "The last time I trusted someone with my heart. I'm not Jonathan Blackwell," Sam said gently. "And you're not the same woman who was betrayed in Boston. We've both been shaped by our pasts, but we don't have to be defined by them." She looked up at him, this man who had stood beside her from her first day in Copper Creek, who had defended her when others judged, who had seen her true self and loved her for it, not despite it. "Yes," Priscilla said, her voice strengthening with certainty. "Yes, I'll marry you." The kiss that followed was tender and reverent, a promise sealed under the vast winter sky. When they finally parted, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "I should go," he murmured. "Before I forget myself entirely." Priscilla smiled, a new boldness rising within her. "Or you could come inside." "We are engaged, after all." Sam pulled back, studying her face. "Are you certain?" "I've never been more certain of anything," she replied, and it was true. Whatever came next, whatever challenges they faced, she knew with absolute clarity that Samuel Eastwood was the man she wanted by her side. Their wedding took place on New Year's Day, 1877, in the same church where Priscilla had once stood as an outsider. Now the pews were filled with people who had become friends, Mrs. Thompson beaming in the front row, Dr. Miller looking distinguished in his best suit, the Morgan family with a fully recovered Emma, and even Eleanor Caldwell wearing what might almost be described as a smile. Reverend Williams, who had once preached obliquely about her questionable character, now spoke warmly of love's transformative power as he joined their hands in marriage. "Do you, Samuel James Eastwood, take Priscilla Ann Porter to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part?" Sam's eyes never left hers as he answered with unwavering certainty. "I do." When Priscilla's turn came, her voice rang clear through the church. "I do. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Williams declared. "You may kiss your bride." Sam's kiss was reverent yet possessive, a public declaration of what they had privately acknowledged weeks earlier. When they turned to face the congregation as Mr. and Mrs. Eastwood, Priscilla felt a profound sense of rightness, as though her long journey had finally led her exactly where she was meant to be. The reception at the hotel dining room was a joyous affair, with music and dancing lasting well into the evening. As night fell, Sam led Priscilla to the wagon that would take them to their new home, a small house on the edge of town that he had been secretly preparing for weeks, with help from friends in the community. "Welcome home, Mrs. Eastwood," he said, lifting her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. Inside, a fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow over simple but comfortable furnishings. Priscilla walked through the rooms, taking in the careful touches that spoke of Sam's thoughtfulness: bookshelves for her collection, a desk positioned to catch the morning light, wildflowers in a vase despite the winter season. "It's perfect," she told him, her heart full. Later, as they lay entwined in the privacy of their marriage bed, Priscilla traced the contours of Sam's face in the firelight. "What are you thinking?" he asked, capturing her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "I'm thinking about belonging," she replied. "About how long I've searched for a place where I truly fit. And have you found it?" His blue eyes were serious, intent on her answer. Priscilla smiled, remembering the first day they met when she had stood alone and uncertain at her cabin door. "I have. It isn't Copper Creek, though I've grown to love this town. It isn't this house, lovely as it is." "What is it, then?" She leaned down to kiss him softly. "It's wherever you are, Sam. That's where I belong." The decision about whether to stay in Copper Creek or accept the position in Silver Springs was made in February, when the town council unanimously voted to offer Sam the permanent sheriff's position. "They say old Sheriff Wilson was so impressed by how you handled things while he was recovering that he recommended you specifically," Priscilla told him over dinner, having heard the news from Mrs. Thompson at the general store. Sam looked thoughtful. "Would you be disappointed if we stayed?" "Silver Springs is a larger town, might have more opportunities." Priscilla reached across the table to take his hand. "Copper Creek is our home. These people have become our family. I can't think of anywhere I'd rather be." And so they stayed, building their life together in the frontier town that had once seemed so unwelcoming. Priscilla continued teaching, expanding the school curriculum and eventually lobbying for a larger building as attendance grew. Sam served as sheriff with a fair hand and steadfast dedication to the community's safety. Their first child, a daughter they named Grace, arrived in the spring of 1878, delivered by Dr. Miller with Mrs. Thompson serving as midwife. When Sam held his daughter for the first time, his expression of wonder and love brought tears to Priscilla's eyes. "She's perfect," he whispered, gently touching the infant's tiny fingers. Just like her mother. Grace's birth was celebrated throughout the town, even Mrs. Caldwell brought a handmade quilt and offered to organize a rotation of women to help Priscilla during her recovery. As Grace grew, Priscilla found new rhythms to her days teaching while Mrs. Thompson or another trusted friend watched the baby, then hurrying home to nurse and cuddle her daughter before preparing dinner for Sam's return. Though the work was constant, she had never been happier. Thomas James Eastwood joined their family 2 years later, a sturdy boy with Sam's blue eyes and determined chin. Sam built an addition to their home, adding 2 bedrooms and expanding the kitchen to accommodate their growing family. Life in Copper Creek evolved as well. The railroad came through in 1880, bringing new prosperity and connections to the wider world. Priscilla's school gained a reputation for excellence, attracting families from surrounding areas. When the town council proposed building a proper schoolhouse with multiple classrooms, they asked Priscilla to serve as headmistress. "You've earned their respect," Sam told her proudly when she shared the news. "Just as I always knew you would." On warm summer evenings, they would often sit on their porch watching their children play in the yard, marveling at how fully their lives had intertwined with the fabric of the community. Friends would stop by with fresh vegetables from their gardens or to share news and conversation. The isolation Priscilla had felt upon her arrival seemed like a distant memory. One such evening, as the sun set in a spectacular display of orange and purple, Sam put his arm around her shoulders. "Happy?" he asked, echoing the question he'd posed years earlier on the Thompsons' porch. Priscilla leaned into his embrace, watching Grace teach little Thomas how to catch fireflies. "Completely," she answered. "Though sometimes I can hardly believe this is my life. When I came here, I was so certain I would never belong anywhere again." "I remember the day you arrived," Sam said, his voice warm with reminiscence. "Standing there with your chin held high despite the whispers, looking like you might break in a strong wind but determined not to show it." "I was terrified," Priscilla admitted. "And then there you were, up on my roof, looking thoroughly unimpressed with the Boston lady who'd come to teach," Sam laughed. "Unimpressed, I was smitten from the first moment, just too stubborn to admit it. We've come a long way since then." "We have indeed, Mrs. Eastwood." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "And we have further still to go." In the autumn of 1882, when Grace was 4 and Thomas 2, Priscilla made a discovery that would once again change their family. She waited until the children were asleep to share the news with Sam. "I believe we'll need to expand the house again," she told him as they sat before the fire. Sam looked up from the newspaper he was reading. "Oh, why's that?" "Because by next spring we'll need room for another little Eastwood." His face lit with joy as he understood her meaning. "Truly." "You're certain?" Priscilla nodded, her hand instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. Dr. Miller confirmed it today. Sam was beside her in an instant, gathering her into his arms. "I love you," he said fervently. "I love our children. I love the life we've built." "As do I," Priscilla replied, nestling against him. "More than I ever dreamed possible." Their third child, Catherine Eleanor Eastwood, arrived in April 1883, completing their family. Kate, as she was soon called, had Priscilla's dark hair and Sam's adventurous spirit, keeping her parents on their toes from the moment she could crawl. As their children grew, so too did Copper Creek. The small frontier settlement transformed into a proper town with a bank, a newspaper office, several shops, and even a small theater. Sam's responsibilities increased accordingly, but he never wavered in his devotion to his family or his commitment to the community's welfare. Priscilla's school flourished, eventually growing to include 3 full-time teachers besides herself. She developed a program specifically for working children who could only attend sporadically, ensuring they received practical education that would serve them throughout their lives. Her methods drew attention from educators in larger cities, and she occasionally published articles on frontier education in Eastern periodicals. "Ironic, isn't it?" she remarked to Sam after receiving a letter from a Boston educational journal requesting her contribution. "The scandal that drove me from Boston ultimately led me to the work that now interests them." "They lost a remarkable woman," Sam replied simply. "Their loss, our gain." In 1886, on their 10th wedding anniversary, Sam surprised Priscilla with a trip to San Francisco, their first real journey since settling in Copper Creek. Mrs. Thompson insisted on staying with the children, practically pushing the couple onto the train. "You two deserve some time alone," she declared. "Go see the ocean and remember what it was like before you had 3 little ones underfoot." San Francisco dazzled them with its grandeur and energy. They stayed in a luxurious hotel, attended the opera, strolled through manicured parks, and stood breathless before the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. On their final evening, as they watched the sunset from a vantage point overlooking the bay, Sam turned to Priscilla with an expression that took her back to their courtship days. "Would you ever want to live in a city like this?" he asked. With theaters and libraries and all the things you left behind in Boston, Priscilla considered the question seriously, looking out at the glittering waters and the elegant buildings rising on the hills. "It's beautiful," she acknowledged, "and there are things I miss about city life. But no, Sam. My heart is in Copper Creek." His smile was brilliant with relief and love. "Mine too." They returned home renewed, greeted by children who tumbled into their arms with exuberant stories of their week with Mrs. Thompson, who had apparently spoiled them shamelessly in their parents' absence. Life continued its steady rhythm, marked by the passing seasons and their children's milestones. Grace proved to have her mother's intellect and love of learning, devouring books and asking endless questions. Thomas inherited his father's sense of justice and protective nature, always standing up for younger children and solving disputes among his friends. Kate was a free spirit, artistic and independent, filling sketchbooks with drawings of the world around her. In 1890, when Priscilla was 36 and Sam 40, an outbreak of influenza swept through Copper Creek. For weeks, they worked tirelessly alongside Dr. Miller, caring for the sick and organizing community resources to ensure no family went without necessities. When Sam fell ill himself, Priscilla nursed him day and night, remembering with grim determination the mother she had lost to a similar illness years before. "Don't you dare leave me, Samuel Eastwood," she whispered fiercely as his fever raged. "We have too many years ahead of us still." Whether it was her determined nursing, Dr. Miller's medicine, or simply Sam's stubborn will to live, he recovered. As he regained his strength, Priscilla finally allowed herself to acknowledge how close she had come to losing him. "I thought I might lose you," she admitted one evening as she helped him to the porch for some fresh air. "I've never been so frightened." Sam's hand tightened around hers. "Takes more than a fever to separate me from you, Priscilla. I promised you forever, remember?" As their children entered adolescence, new challenges emerged. Grace, now 12, began questioning why girls couldn't pursue the same opportunities as boys, echoing her mother's earlier convictions about equality. "She's certainly your daughter," Sam observed after Grace presented a well-researched argument for why she should be allowed to join the boys' science club. "With your stubbornness," Priscilla retorted, though she couldn't suppress her pride in her daughter's articulate advocacy. Thomas, at 10, was developing into a skilled horseman and had begun accompanying Sam on some of his less dangerous duties as sheriff. Kate, 8 going on 18, charmed everyone she met with her vivid imagination and artistic talents. In 1894, Copper Creek celebrated its 50th anniversary with a week of festivities. As one of the town's most respected couples, Sam and Priscilla were asked to speak at the main celebration. Standing before the gathered community, many of whom had been present on that dusty day when she'd first arrived, Priscilla felt a profound sense of belonging that still occasionally surprised her. "When I came to Copper Creek 18 years ago," she began, her voice clear in the afternoon air, "I was a stranger seeking refuge. What I found instead was a home." Not immediately, this drew knowing laughter from the crowd, but gradually, through shared hardships and celebrations, through blizzards and harvests, through the birth of children and the growth of our community. She looked at Sam, standing proud beside her, silver now threading his dark hair. "I found family in a place where I once feared I would never belong, and for that I will be eternally grateful." Later that evening, as they walked home hand in hand, Sam asked, "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if you'd never come to Copper Creek? If you'd stayed in Boston despite everything?" Priscilla considered the question. "Sometimes, but then I think of all I would have missed, our children, our friends, the work we've done here, and you, Sam, most of all you." He stopped, turning to face her in the moonlight. At 44, Priscilla was still beautiful to him, the lines around her eyes and mouth only adding character to the face he loved beyond reason. "Do you remember what you said to me that day we returned from helping the Morgans?" he asked. "When we stopped on the hill overlooking town." "I said Copper Creek felt like home," Priscilla recalled. "And do you remember what I told you the night I proposed?" She smiled, the memory still vivid after all these years. "Not everything gets taken away." "It's still true," Sam said softly. "All these years later, through everything we've faced together, some things endure, Priscilla. What we have, it endures." As the century drew to a close, change continued to shape their lives. Grace, at 18, announced her intention to attend college in Denver, determined to become a doctor. Though Priscilla would miss her daughter terribly, she felt only pride in Grace's ambition and courage. "She reminds me of you," Sam said as they helped Grace pack for her departure. "Same fire, same determination to make a difference." "With your moral compass," Priscilla added. "And more opportunities than either of us had at her age." Thomas, now 16, had already declared his intention to follow in his father's footsteps in law enforcement, while 14-year-old Kate talked of studying art in San Francisco someday. "We've raised them to fly," Priscilla observed with a mixture of pride and wistfulness. "And now they're testing their wings." "That's what good parents do," Sam replied, wrapping his arm around her waist. "Give them roots and wings." In the summer of 1900, Priscilla and Sam celebrated their 23rd wedding anniversary. The world had changed dramatically since they'd first met. Automobiles were beginning to appear in larger cities. Electric lights had reached Copper Creek, and the new century promised even more rapid advancement. One warm evening, they sat on their porch swing watching the sunset, just as they had countless times before. Their home was quieter now, with Grace married and living in Denver, Thomas working as a deputy in a neighboring town, and Kate away at school in San Francisco. "Do you ever miss the excitement of our early years here?" Sam asked, his hand resting comfortably on Priscilla's knee. "The drama, the uncertainty," Priscilla leaned her head against his shoulder. "Not for a moment. I had enough drama and uncertainty before I met you to last a lifetime." "You never told me if you regretted it," Sam said suddenly. "Standing up for those factory girls in Boston, writing those articles, knowing what it cost you?" "I don't regret it," Priscilla answered without hesitation. "It was the right thing to do, even if the price was high. And look where it led me." She squeezed his hand. "To you, to our children, to this life we've built together." Sam's eyes, still intensely blue despite the crow's feet at their corners, held hers with the same devotion they had shown for over 2 decades. "Do you remember the first time you told me you felt like you didn't belong?" "I remember," she said softly. "I was so afraid of being rejected again, of building a life only to have it crumble. And what did I tell you?" Priscilla smiled, the memory of that moment still clear after all these years. "You said I belong where you are." "I meant it then," Sam replied, bringing her hand to his lips. "I mean it now, always have, always will." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Priscilla Porter Eastwood reflected on the long journey that had brought her to this moment, from a disgraced teacher fleeing scandal to a respected educator, beloved wife, mother, and community member. The path had not been straight or easy, but it had led her exactly where she was meant to be. "I love you, Samuel Eastwood," she whispered, the words as true now as they had been on their wedding day. "And I love you," he answered, his voice still able to send warmth coursing through her after all these years. "My Priscilla, who finally found where she belongs." In the growing darkness, with the sounds of Copper Creek settling into evening around them, they remained together on the porch swing, two hearts that had found in each other the home they had always sought. And as night fell fully over the town that had once been strange and unwelcoming, Priscilla knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true belonging not in a place, but in the love that had transformed her life and given her the courage to build the future she had once only dared to dream of.